Hello, most beautiful stars. Hello, hello. I am Courtney, host of Stars the Morning Light, and this is an episode that I will attach to the Sun series. It's kind of a little footnote, but food for thought for everyone going into 2026. I am recording this January of 2026. Um, I'm opening up with the Mandela effect. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about the quote unquote St. Francis prayer, back to the Mandela effect, and then we're going to talk about the Lord's Prayer in original Arabic, or Aramaic, I should say. I don't believe I'm going to go into that into detail, but there's reasons why it's there. And if you track with me, by the end of this, I will put everything in a nice little bow and tie it all up for everybody, bring it full circle. So, welcome in. Enjoy the chat. Please be respectful and do enjoy. However you want to take this information, whatever you want to do with it, it's yours. So, for those that might not know, the Mandela effect is this now, which probably has always been, but now we're aware of this collective phenomenon that apparently it could be large groups of collective individuals have memories that are inaccurate, but yet they're remembering it the same way. But when you look up the facts, it's inaccurate. And it started, and it's called the Mandela effect because it started with a large population of people remembered Nelson Mandela dying in the 80s. And so hence now the term for this very interesting collective thinking, memory, what have you. Whoa. So I will tell you how it came to be in my life of referring to this, even knowing it was a thing. My husband came home from work one day and he's like, "Hey, have you heard of the Mandela effect?" And of course, no, I hadn't. And so that poor man, I kept trying to figure out what he was trying to say. And come to find out, he then just simply asked me, "Well, Courtney, when do you think Nelson Mandela died?" And I went, "Oh, I clearly remember that. I fully felt that, experienced that." And I said, it was like the late 80s. Or not late 80s, late 90s. I personally thought it happened in like 1998, 99, 98. And he's staring at me. And he said, "No, Courtney, he died in 2013. And then I said, "No, you are wrong." You are wrong. I fully remember having a like visceral response to hearing that he was dead. All the emotions, the sadness, the grief, I remember. And I remember having to like go to high school and being around my peers thinking none of them are even paying attention to this. They don't know the traumatic, what this is. They don't understand. Like I just explained to them. I remember having the full heightened senses for a few days of grieving that man. I said, what doesn't make sense is you're telling me a whole bunch of people out there think he died in the 80s? That doesn't make any sense because in the 80s, and I started telling the history of Nelson Mandela. In the 80s, he was in prison. It was a huge thing. He was in prison. Then he was let out. Then he broke the apartheid or negotiated, ending the apartheid. Then he wins the Nobel Peace Prize. Then he becomes the president. And yeah, just a few years later, probably because being in prison for almost 30 years, unfortunately, he died, and I know he had to have died. It must have been 98, 99. I know I'm right, Brad. That's my husband's name. And he just said, no, Courtney. You think it was the 90s. The majority of people think it's the 80s. And he said, but the reality was that Nelson Mandela died in 2013. So, of course, beloveds, same as the rest of us, whoa, the rabbit hole that I went down. What? So then my mind, I had to go, 2013. I'm married, I'm a case manager, I'm doing all... I don't have any point of reference in my memory of hearing and feeling and experiencing him dying in 2013. None. Because I feel, and my memory presents it to me, that happened in like 98, 99, 98. Like it already happened. So probably if I did hear about it in 13, it probably was like, what? No, he's already been dead. Like I already grieved. So then I'm learning about this whole Mandela effect. And I'm thinking, how are people, why are they associating his death with the 80s? Because he was in prison, rabbit hole. And then I had to look into, Courtney, why are you associating his death with the late 90s? What is going on here? And so I will say, and I'm speaking for myself, I believe memories and how we associate our memories, how we bring our memories into the forefront of our mind, how we, sit and reminisce. We most often are not going to remember the in and out days, the days that we're just going to the grocery store, going to work, nothing really happens. It's just a day. It's just, which we have many of those, right? We have so many days of just being. We're just there. But if we're trying to pull a memory from 1986 of just being, nothing really happened, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult, right? Like if I just randomly said, what were you doing January 16th in 1986? Unless something very significant happened, to pinpoint the exact day is not going to be all that easy. And we all understand this. But what creates that? What creates that within the individual? And then let's talk about the collective. What creates how we remember? Well, and most of us, we tend to remember the tragic stuff, right? The more harmful, the more painful stuff than the great stuff. That has been known for a long time, and they've been trying to figure that out since Freud. Why do we do this? It's interesting. When we go back in our memories, the ones that we do recall usually are associated or attached to some kind of heightened sense within us. Heightened sense within us. And because we live in a world that is shaped and formed and pretty much operates and flows within fear, many of our memories are based more out of when was the heightened sense of fear within me explosive or high or pain or grief or what have you. And so we can recall those memories so much more. Opposed to These really beautiful, maybe peaceful memories. We have those. We do have them. Or joyous, great. This is the miracle of life. This is the beauty within everything. We have those. Not so much coming to the forefront. We have them though. And so either side of that spectrum of fear and joy, fear and love, we have these memories. But the memories are usually associated with some kind of heightened sense or senses. So I'm going to be talking about these heightened senses, or maybe a little bit of a sixth sense, as we're talking about how does a collective, an individual, have these interesting Mandela effects within the memory. And I'm going to be associating it with different prayers. So in my humble belief, because there's a ton of different Mandela effects out there right now as to how things were spelled, like the Berenstain Bears. Or there's a new one out there that we're noticing for us who grew up with Yosemite Sam, who would say, well, when we were young, we would say, what in tarnation, right? We got to learn tarnation, like the word tarnation. So when you were a kid and you're watching this cartoon, we would say, we would copy, what in tarnation, right? Try to do the accent that he did. Apparently, he never said in. Apparently, people have gone back and watched the cartoons, and Yosemite Sam never used the word in. He just said, what tarnation? What tarnation? I mean, you can watch the cartoon, what tarnation? But us as a collective, we formed a sentence. What in tarnation? Like, what are you doing in that tarnation? What's going on in the tarnation? We collectively formed a sentence and put the word in it. So a lot of the collective is now saying, no, he said what in tarnation. When you watch the cartoon, it's what tarnation. There's no in. So the collective, as a one mind, thought body, hive mind, what have you, will do things like that. We will switch out words, we'll form an entire sentence to make sense of it. We will move things about. So back to Nelson Mandela's death and how I assumed that it was like in 1998, 99 or something. I mean, I really thought I was grieving. I felt it. I was feeling it. And I was looking around all of my peers going, why are they not acknowledging how big of a thing this is? Well, for me, it was the 98, 99 in my memory. Because in reality, that's when Nelson Mandela decided, no, I'm not going to continue being a president. I'm stepping down. So for myself in high school, I was very influenced by what was going on in Rwanda. Every day in second period homeroom, the news was playing what was going on in Rwanda, and watching it every day as no one's doing anything. It shaped my entire high school life. It shaped my entire high school life. Long story, but it really did shape my life at those critical years of development, right? Watching it every day of No one's doing anything. Well, so I'm still carrying that. Well, now jump to like 98 or so, 99, when he tells the world, Nelson Mandela tells the world, I'm not going to continue being the president. I'm not going to run again. I'm stepping down. Well, I'm sure in a teenage Courtney mind, that did give me a massive sense of grief and fear and loss, because I did not trust, as I just spent a few years before that, carrying all that with Wanda, what happened there, and shaping my entire high school existence, and then finding out that Nelson Mandela is going to step down. I probably took that in with full visceral response of, oh my goodness, I don't trust that if he's not in office, that what happened in Rwanda is not going to happen there. I do not trust any of these people. I do not trust this. I do not trust that. South Africa is going to be worse than it was before. That, like, I'm sure in my mind, I'm feeling it right now. I'm sure in my mind, I took him stating, that beautiful man, I took him stating that he was going to step down as president and not run for another term. And so he could do more advocacy. I'm sure that in my teenage mind, who was very focused on a whole lot of Africa, all South, Middle, all of it, the whole continent, I probably went into full fear mode. And out of that fear mode of, oh my goodness, if he's not there, if he's not the president, everything's going to fall apart. I did that. And then all of a sudden, I'm in my 40s, not in high school, and my husband asks me, when did he die? And so my mind, because I was grieving him stepping down, I was in so much fear. It felt like a huge loss to South Africa. Somehow my memory associated that with, that must have been when he died. So I'm thinking the collective, I can't necessarily speak for the collective, but in the 80s, when Nelson Mandela was actually in prison, there was so much, especially here in the States and around the globe, focused on what was going on in Africa. I mean, we are the world, hands across America. I mean, there's so much emphasis, which, beautiful, that's fine. But because these things that we are witnessing, seeing, heightened sense that maybe the collective associated that apartheid that was broken, maybe they associated it with a death of, like, see, this beautiful man died, so therefore this apartheid needs to happen. Who knows what the collective was thinking? I know I was wrong in 98. Completely wrong. So was this collective. Because that lovely human lived like another almost 20 years. Heightened senses based out of what we perceive, mixed in with either fear or extensive joy. Heightened senses that I have repeatedly stated that from 2026 and onward, people's senses, I think the Akashic even mentioned this, people's senses are going to feel more alive, more heightened, which is good. We need it. But I'm posing the question now, and I'm going to pose it again at the end. If that be the case, that our senses are going to be, and I'm talking about all of the senses, your sixth sense and all the other five senses, right? How you, and they're associated with how you perceive and how you feel about things. Heightened. So are they heightened out of intense fear? Do they become fiery and alive and prickly because of intense fear? Or intense joy? And regardless of the how, we have been learning that it's going to happen. That it's going to happen, that our senses will be awoken, will wake up within us. So, my question really is, how do you plan to form and hold your memories around them then? Are you going to notice what you're noticing? Are our memories going to be taken in through those senses and maybe a bit askewed, maybe a bit foggy because of the heightened experience? Let me go on. So, many people know the Saint Francis prayer of Assisi, the prayer for peace, or the peace prayer, right? I love this prayer. I love it. It's a great prayer. Saint Francis is wonderful. Love it. Did you know? Did you know? He never even wrote that. He did not write that. Hence also kind of how Mandela effects happen. Change over time. Little changes, influences, forgetfulness, all sorts of things. I did not know that. I'll admit, I did not know that. I did not know that St. Francis did not write the St. Francis prayer. To the extent that that prayer was actually written damn near 700 years after the man was dead. So let's talk about this for a minute. Talk about a Mandela. Beautiful St. Francis. He lived, I don't know, mid 1150 something to 1229 or something like that, 28. So 1200, 13th century, 13th century, folks. The St. Francis prayer, the prayer for peace, was actually released in a publication, a Catholic publication, pamphlet, magazine, what have you, during the First World War. 1912. The First World War. So this man dies hundreds of years earlier, and it was never even assigned to him in that publication. This was a Catholic magazine trying to send out a beautiful prayer in France at a very difficult time, World War I. So that peace prayer, then during the midst of World War I, circulated through France, and it gave a lot of people really great, beautiful hope and courage and all sorts of things, right? Faith. Well, then that was sent, and I am paraphrasing this, beloveds. You can do the research yourself. Then the prayer, this pamphlet, was sent to Italy and to a cardinal there, whoever. It finally gets in the hands of like the Pope, and the Pope is like, we need to republish this. We're going to publish this out in Italy and Austria, all over, right? Of our area. This is what we're doing. And that republication of it never even gave credit to the first publication in France, of where it came from. No, nobody's getting credit for this beautiful prayer. Okay, that's during World War One. And there was a few different mishaps here. I think there was a cardinal that was like, whoa, 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 we need to give credit to somebody, but the church was like, whatever, it's a prayer. Just do it. Just use it. And there's some that believe that it was actually more in a style of writing from a fellow, um, uh, a friend of St. Francis, a fellow bishop or who have you, because it was more in his writing style. But still, then, 100 years later, this was just a magazine, and probably one of the founders, like, this is beautiful to put out there. Let's put this out there in France. Gets to Italy. Let's put it out there. Gets to the Pope, and the Pope's like, yeah, this needs to go everywhere. Yeah. That's World War One. World War Two. At some point in World War Two, truckloads of postcards with now what is called the St. Francis Prayer of Peace, peace prayer from St. Francis of Assisi. That prayer that we know of today, World War II, was coming to the States, being shipped from France and Italy from the state to the States by the truckloads. Every house, every human in the States was receiving this postcard with the prayer on it. And I'm sure, beloveds, I did not continue to research. I mean, my mind was kind of like, whoa. I am sure because, the States in World War II, we took some time deciding what we were going to do about that, deciding if we were going to participate. And it took a lot of news hitting all of us as to what was happening there for us to then participate and fight. It took a while. That is in history. Many of us know that. And many of the countries know this, right? I have a feeling. It might be just a feeling. I didn't look it up. It's probably, who knows if I'm right. But I have a feeling that on that postcard that apparently was being sent here, like I said, truckloads. Every human in the United States was receiving these postcards with, quote unquote, the St. Francis prayer on them. And I have a feeling, as if we all know postcards, the prayer was probably on the front and on the back. Could have been messages from anyone. Could have been, this is what's really happening. This is, we need help. So to this day, since World War II, now that has become the prayer of St. Francis. The peace prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, who actually died damn near 700 years earlier. Hmm. Hmm. And I'm sure generations from now, it's going to continue to be his prayer. I'm sure it is. Because that's what history does. That's what putting new labels on things, changing some stuff, adding the word in to things shifts stuff. And it's a beautiful prayer. I do. I love the prayer. If for those who grow up Catholic, they know it more so. I did not grow up Catholic. I was not introduced to the prayer until I was in recovery. And so this is also kind of the interesting aspect of that. So the 12 any 12-step program comes from 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they do work. That's a lovely it's the steps work. I should say that. Um, when that, so the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous was being formed, when people are getting together, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob are trying to put this recovery program together, it was in the 30s and the 40s, when by the time 1939, 1940, that's when they started like really solidifying, okay, what works. We should make this just simple steps. We should make this easy for people, right? And they were bringing in, they would have meetings, a committee of doctors, psychiatrists, uh, rabbis, reverends, all sorts of people, right? That would come together and really try to form the wording, what does work, what doesn't work, that sort of thing. It was a very, very significant group of different educated beings coming together to create what is now the 12 steps. That postcard with the St. Francis prayer, I'm sure, was prominent in some of the dialogue. So in recovery, usually, I'm not saying this is for everybody, when someone is first trying to get sober and they're coming off of drugs or alcohol, it is very foggy because that person just spent years probably in what is called the fog. The fog. Where perception and reality are always a skewed memory, not really intact. Senses are extremely dull. Extremely dull. And then, oh, well, here's the light. I'm trying to be sober. I'm doing the best that I can. And at some point, someone around you will give you what is called the third step prayer, the prayer of St. Francis, and the Serenity Prayer to help you in your recovery. It's still that way to today, since the 30s and 40s. But yet, St. Francis never even wrote that. He's associated with it now. And it's a beautiful prayer that many utilize as they are coming out of the fog. Because it's difficult. It's difficult to wake up. and go, whoa, what the hell happened? I remember, and I'll just say this and I'll move on. I remember the first morning when I was getting sober that I did not want to pretty much kill all the birds outside chirping. Because I spent every morning for many a years screaming at them to stop chirping. And I remember the first day that I laid in bed and I heard them, and it didn't rattle my skull and cause me pain. It caused me joy. That's what it can do when you come out of the fog. More joy is actually experienced, opposed to the everyday thing that causes intense pain. I'm out of the fog. I know what I did yesterday. I know what I did 2 weeks ago. I feel good. The birds are waking me up. And this is beautiful. St. Francis did write something, though, that I think a lot of people might not know. Is, God, it's interesting. We're going to read it, how this happens, but I'm going to read a little bit as to, so he kind of wrote this on his deathbed, and he didn't actually write it. Two of his fellow brethren dictated it, and it's actually a song. It's a song. He did not write it because he had an eye disease that left him pretty much blind. So this is, I'm just going to read a bit. The legend. So the story associated with what St. Francis actually wrote. A legend which emphasizes the topos of brightness, in quotations, and topos means a traditional or conventional literary or theoretical theme or topic, meaning on the topic of brightness, okay, it says he did not physically write the song because of his blindness from an eye disease, but he dictated it and he did it looking at nature through the eye of the mind. The eye of the mind. So Father Eric Dole wrote, though physically blind, he was able to see more clearly than ever with the inner eye of his mind. With unparalleled clarity, he perceived the basic unity of all creation and his own place amidst God's creatures. I gotta hold this up, folks. His love for all creatures, great and small, had grown into unity in his own heart. He was so open to reality that it found a place to be at home in his heart, and he was at home everywhere and anywhere. He was the center of communion with all creatures. And Eric Dole actually was a father that lived at the time of St. Francis, who said this man dictated this beautiful song by just his inner eye, his eye of the mind. He was so attached, so feeling that he was a part of creation, one with creation, and communion with creation, that his clarity. It says, with unparalleled clarity, he perceived the basic unity of all creation with that inner eye. So he wrote, dictated from his inner eye. People wrote it down. It is the Song of the Sun, the S-U-N. The Song of the Sun, S-U-N. He was actually he was on his deathbed, and this was in 1228. 1228. The last little bit I want to tell you, because we're going to read it, it's the last bit that he talks about the sister bodily death, the sister of death, right? That was right before this was going to be performed as a song in the church for the first time, and he's going to hear it. He basically, St. Francis says, wait, we need to add this. And he is on his deathbed, right? So he added death. But this is actually from St. Francis, not the prayer of peace or the peace prayer, which is beautiful. You can use it. But that was actually written during World War I. This, 1228, the 13th century. The Song of the Sun, S-U-N. The highest, all-powerful, good Lord, yours are the praises, the glory, the honor, and all blessing. To you alone, the highest, do they belong, and no man is worthy to mention your name. Be praised, my Lord, through all your creatures, especially Sir Brother Sun, S-U-N, who brings the day, and you give light through him, and he is beautiful and radiant in all his splendor. Of you, the highest, he bears the likeness. Praise be you, my Lord, through Sister Moon and the stars. In heaven you formed them clear and precious and beautiful. Praise be you, my Lord, through Brother Wind, and through the air, cloudy and serene, and every kind of weather through which you give sustenance to your creatures. Praise be you, my Lord, through Sister Water, which is very useful and humble and precious. Praise be you, my Lord, through Brother Fire, through whom your light praise be you, my Lord, through Brother Fire, through whom you light the night, and he is beautiful and playful and robust and strong. Praise be you, my Lord, through Sister Mother Earth, who sustains us and governs us, and who produces very varied fruits with colored flowers and herbs. Praise be you, my Lord, through those who give pardon for your love and bear infirmity and tribulation. Blessed are those who endure in peace, for by you, the highest, they shall be crowned. Praise be you, my Lord, through the sister bodily death, for whom no living man can escape. Woe to those who die in mortal sin. Blessed are those who will find your most holy will, for the second death shall do them no harm. Praise and bless my Lord, and give him thanks, and serve him with great humility. That second death at the very end is reference to basically judgment. That's what second death means in most of today's scriptures and understanding. That is when, okay, this body expires, you die, then it's the quote unquote judgment. Where are you going? You going to hell? You're going to heaven. Where are you going? Right? Did you all take that in though? The Song of the Sun, S-U-N. And this is what St. Francis truly wrote from his inner eye. While he was blind, slowly dying, with unparalleled clarity, he perceived the basic unity of all creation. Be praised, my Lord, through all your creatures, especially Sir Brother Sun, S-U-N, who brings the day, and you give light through him, and he is beautiful and radiant in all his splendor. Of you, the highest, he bears your likeness. Praise be you, my Lord, through Sister Moon and the stars, through Brother Wind, through Sister Water, through Brother Fire, through Sister Mother Earth, and Sister Bodily Death. Wow. That inner eye, unparalleled clarity, not fog, unparalleled clarity. Sir Brother Sun, Sister Moon and the stars, the wind, the fire, all of it. But do we ever talk about this one, though? We barely ever know that St. Francis wrote this. And I also read briefly that, teenagers, when they're in catechism classes and they find out St. Francis did not actually write that prayer, I guess it's devastating. It is a moment that space is being held for those young ones. As I hope I didn't devastate you, all of it is beautiful prayers. But to go from a man who, in the 13th century, had ultimate clarity as his communion with all of creation, because that is what everyone, whoever wrote about St. Francis, has ever said, his remarkable understanding and clarity of his relation within creation from that to hundreds of years later being associated with a prayer. It's not a bad prayer, but associated with a prayer that's not the emphasis there. And that's okay though. Mandela effects happen over time, not just based on the heightened senses of how our mind coordinates all of our memories, but also these little things that happen. What, incarnation? All these little things that are added or taken out. In a world right now where our senses are going to be very heightened, regardless of what we're doing, by the way, it is time. It is what's going to be going on within the body, it's a part of the grand awakening, as people would say. So pay attention to your body. Notice what you're noticing as memories are being created. Notice if it is being fueled by fear or if it's being fueled by joy and love, trust. Because everybody's going to be coming out of a fog. Out of a fog. So the perceptions that we had before, within a fog, forgetfulness, error, within that, and you wake up and all of a sudden the birds are chirping and this is delightful. When we're doing that, pay attention to how we are going to perceive and create the memories. I'm going to end with another prayer. And I'm really asking everyone, if the Mandela effect is a collective phenomenon, well, then the collective has a bit more responsibility as to how things are shaped, how things are remembered, how things are formed. I'm going to end with this. So let us remember, we went from heightened senses create oftentimes our memories. And we're all waking up and coming out of the fog, the forgetfulness. So your senses are going to be high. Which then in turns creates some Mandela effects. Into things change over time. Things become associated with things that have nothing to do with one another. St. Francis lived in the 13th century. He was huge during the Crusades. And he had complete understanding and clarity as to his relation within creation, and he adored everything within it. Based on that inner eye. Inner eye. That he is saying, praise you, Lord, who radiates and shows us through the S-U-N, the sister moon, the stars, the wind, Mother Earth, fire. All the elements. So how do you plan to remember? How do you plan to remember? What a very weird question, right? How did I know? How can I don't have control over my memories. Is your perception not your memories? Do we continue to see everything through the lens and the scope of the heightened fear senses? Or do we choose to see things through the heightened scope, the heightened senses of joy and love, trust, 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 trust? Because one day looking back, 60 years from now, whoa, this Mandela effect, this is what was really going on, but the collective remembers it this way. Wow, and if the collective remembers it this way, how did that shape 60 years from now? I'm going to read and leave you with it. The Lord's Prayer. in the best translation I can find in the original Aramaic. Of course, we know Jesus, quote unquote, would have spoken Aramaic. Not Arabic, Aramaic. It's actually different. It's then it would go from to Greek to Latin to all these different translations, Old English, all these translations of the Lord's Prayer. I double checked multiple different Aramaic sources, and there are some really good websites out there because I have to anyways for different things that I read. This I think this was the same translation in 3 of those different sources. So this is the one that I chose. Because if it's at least 3, well, I'm going to roll with that, right? So with everything being said today, the fog, the forgetfulness, the awakening, the Mandela effect, your perception, heightened senses, what St. Francis really wrote. Let us read this. This is the Lord's Prayer in traditional Aramaic. O birther, father/mother of the cosmos, you create all that moves in light. Focus your light within us. Make it useful as the rays of the beacon show the way. Create your reign of unity now through our fiery hearts and willing hands. Your one desire then acts with us, as in all light, so in all forms. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight, sustenance for the call of growing life. Loose the cords of mistakes binding us as we release the strands we hold of others' guilt. Don't let us enter forgetfulness, but free us from unripenedness. From you is born all ruling will, the power and the life to do, the song that beautifies all, from age to age its renewals. True power to these statements, may they be the source from which all my actions grow, sealed in trust and faith. Amen. I'm actually going to read that one more time. And amen. For those who might be new here to Stars of the Morning Light, thank you for watching and listening. Please leave a like and maybe a comment below. It does help this channel out. Amen. In today's world, we usually take that as when we say amen, it means that we're in agreement. Amen. I agree. That's right. Yes, amen. We're stating that we're in agreement. But amen actually means so it is. It is. So every time we're saying amen, we're basically saying, yes, it is. It is. I'm going to read it one more time. And thank you, beloved stars. Keep shining. You are so beautiful. I hope this gave some food for thought, as in understanding you are a part of creation. You are a creator within that relation. You have more power in the choice of memories moving forward. How are they created? How are they experienced? And what will they create in the future? Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. O birther, father/mother of the cosmos, you create all that moves in light. Focus your light within us. Make it useful as the rays of the beacon show the way. Create your reign of unity now through our fiery hearts and willing hands. Your one desire then acts with ours, as in all light, so in all forms. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight, sustenance for the call of the growing life. Loose the cords of mistakes binding us, as we release the strands we hold of others' guilt. Don't let us enter forgetfulness, but free us from unripenedness. From you is born all ruling will, the power and the life to do, the song that beautifies all. From age to age it renews. Truly power. To these statements, may they be the source from which all my actions grow, sealed in trust and faith. Amen. So it is. Beloved stars, beautiful song for you. The lovely little SUNs with fiery hearts and willing hands. Have a great week. I'll see you again. Cheers.